welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro with Chris Wynn in studio. Glad you could join us on a Monday. Yeah, if you haven't already heard, the president invited the Taliban to
because
Camp
why
David.
not?
Yeah,
right?
why not? Why wouldn't you do that? Joining us on the line right now with us, he put his name in the hat, so to speak. He's a Republican, and he is running against Donald Trump. That would be none other than Representative Joe Walsh. Mr. Walsh, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hey, great to be with you guys. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. So first of all, congratulations on your appearance on Bill. I'm a big Bill Maher fan. I enjoy his show. I thought you did a really good job on Friday. That must have been a pretty cool experience for you going on there. Tell us about it.
Well, it was cool, and like you, I'm a big fan of Bill Maher. I think he's smart. I think he's honest. He abhors political correctness like I do. I mean, it's tough because it is a comedy show, and it's tough to get in a word. But, no, it was great to be on that show. And, look, a lot of people watched that show.
And I have to commend you, Joe, because, look, you took a lot of shrapnel on with Bill because he's a very frank guy, right? I mean, Joe, seriously, he's someone who's not going to pull any punches, and you were able to go toe-to-toe with him there on such a big stage.
No, and again, I'm with you. I appreciate that. Look, this is a weird, scary time in our country's history. You just got to talk turkey and say what you believe in. And when you're sitting next to Bill Maher like that, and he's giving you everything, you gotta fire back at him respectfully.
Sure, and I thought you did a good job. Okay, so let's talk about the news and something that has come up. Obviously, apparently, George Conway has informally advising you on the 2020 GOP campaign. Is there truth to that?
Yeah, George Conway, guys, he's a hell of an American, and I think when they write the history of this bizarro Trump world that we're living in, George Conway is going to be one of the real patriots of this era. Look, his wife is one of Trump's advisors, and George Conway knows what I know, that this guy in the White House is unfit. He's mentally messed up. He's got no business being president, and it takes a lot of courage for George Conway to say that. I'm honored he is informally helping us.
See, I always thought, and maybe I'm wrong on this one, Joe, but I thought that George, he goes on Twitter, he goes after Donald Trump to make a name for himself, and maybe I'm wrong in saying that, but, when his wife is working for the administration, what are those conversations like at the dinner table? That's what confuses me about this whole thing. Make no mistake about it, George Conway is going after his wife's boss. I mean, you really wouldn't see that in almost any other occupation. I mean, what is that relationship like?
I have no clue, guys. All I know is George Conway, and I've been with George Conway. And I'll tell you what, he gets emotional and he gets really pained when he talks about this president because he truly does believe that this president is a danger to the country. And, yeah, that can't be an easy thing for him to say, knowing who his wife is. That's why I think he's just so damn courageous.
Sure.
Do you think he is a perfect example of what an actual Republican conservative is? Right, there are people out there like yourselves and others. Yourself more to an extreme level, but we're not going to get into all that. But I'm saying I think Conway represents what people like other Republicans who have been just absolutely disgusted by the actions of the president of the United States, but still have beliefs that lean Republican, that lean right. That do support principles that your textbook conservative Republican would.
It's again, I call it like a bizarro world. It's just a shame because the Republican Party is like impotent right now. It's all about Trump. Before Trump came along, you were defined by what you believed on the issues. I'm a conservative. I believe in limited government. Stay the heck out of my life. But now in the Trump world, you're defined as a Republican where you are on Trump.
Right.
I'm very outspoken in what I think about the president. I do believe he's unfit. I'm convinced that most Republicans privately agree with me. I know most of my former colleagues up on the Hill agree with me. They're just scared to death to say that publicly.
If you're just joining us, Republican presidential candidate Joe Walsh. So Joe, you were certainly one of Barack Obama's biggest critics, so to speak. I mean, you went after him almost on a daily basis. I want to ask you this question and it's not a policy question because I know you couldn't stand most of Obama's policies, if not all of them. Can we agree, though, Barack Obama, at least this is my opinion, he's a decent man. He's a good father. He's a good husband. As John McCain said in that moment on the campaign trail, a decent man. Can we at least agree on that with Barack Obama?
Oh, amen, amen, amen. And we can't say that about the guy in the White House right now. Look,
right.
You're right. I went to Washington in 2010. I was part of that Tea Party class, and I went there. It was all about the issues, the size of government. But there were plenty of times when I went over the line, and there were plenty of times when I got too personal in my fight, oftentimes, many times against Barack Obama. I'm profoundly sorry for that because I really do believe some of my rhetoric and the rhetoric of others helped put Trump in the White House, and I feel bad about that.
So, Joe, I can imagine, of course, you mentioned the straw that broke the camel's back was what he did on that stage in Helsinki with Vladimir Putin standing up there next to him. So I have to get your take on what's gone down here in the last 48 hours regarding the revelation of the possibility of meeting with the Taliban on American soil, and not just on American soil, but, of course, at Camp David. Your reaction when you found out about this news?
Two reactions, and again, I'm trying to be as polite as I can be. My first reaction is Trump's an absolute moron. He has no idea what he's doing, and when you read the reports about how this really went down, the Taliban going to be on American soil, it's clear that Trump has no freaking clue what he's doing. But the other reaction is the reaction I've always had with Trump. Trump doesn't give a damn about anything but Trump. Again, Helsinki, he stands in front of the world and says, I'm with Putin and not my own men. Trump would have the Taliban over for dinner if it helped Trump. He's not loyal to the country. He's loyal to Trump, period.
All right, Joe, let's talk about Sharpie Gate. Okay, so Donald Trump, after we all know what happened here with the Sharpie, claiming that the hurricane was going to hit Alabama, a blatant lie, and then he doubles down on it with the Sharpie map. We all know what happened there. And then what do some people on his staff do? They try to profit off it, and they're selling these Trump Sharpie markers. Now, your campaign has done something similar to mock Donald Trump, which I find quite funny. Tell us a little bit about that.
Hey, anybody listening right now, guys, go to my website, joewalsh.org, joewalsh.org. I think it's for $25. We'll give you your own Sharpie with a simple instruction on it. Don't lie. Don't lie.
I love it.
Think of how bizarre, again, this is. Look, we all differ on things politically, and I differed with Obama. This is the first time, I think, in American history where we've had a president who literally lies almost every time he opens his mouth. You talk about that Sharpie thing, and yeah, he lied about it, but that's a perfect example of Trump incapable of thinking about anyone but himself. Americans, our fellow citizens in the Carolinas and Georgia, were being pummeled by a hurricane. But the biggest story to Trump is how the media is treating him during the hurricane.
And, Joe, I bring this point up till the cows come home, but I keep saying to myself, let's play the what if Barack Obama would have done this game, right? And you, as a Republican, right, who was critical of President Obama, I mean, I can only imagine what yourself and fellow Republicans would have said about these types of things coming up back during the Obama administration.
You are so spot on, my friend, and I've gotten tired of playing that game, but I'll play it because it still is fun. Okay, so how angry would conservatives and Republicans be if Barack Obama had invited the Taliban to Camp David?
Off the charts.
Think about this. Donald Trump has increased the debt and skyrocketed the deficits at a much faster clip than Obama. My fellow Republicans would be screaming right now with all of this debt because that's what we were doing under Obama.
Joe, I'm the Republican. I'm the conservative, more pro-Trump of the group here. And one thing I've noticed lately is that Donald Trump refuses to ever admit that he's wrong. And like you said with the Sharpie Gate, he made that all about him, which totally detracted from what was actually going on in North Carolina. If he admitted he was wrong a couple of times, would you have more respect for him?
There'd be no story. Yeah, there would have been. I mean, think about that's such a great point. Think about that. So what? You screwed up with a Sharpie, big deal. Yeah, my bad. Let's move on. But look, let's be clear. He's 73 years old. He's never, ever had anybody tell him no in his whole life. he's never had to apologize for anything. I say a lot that Trump is unfit. What do I mean? I mean that virtually every time he opens his mouth, he lies. None of us, no matter our politics, should accept that. But the other big problem is he only thinks of himself. And as silly and stupid as an issue as that Sharpie Gate thing was, it symbolizes who he is as a man. He made it all about himself, and as you said, he couldn't just apologize and move on.
Well, especially when you're thinking about the weather. I mean, the average weatherman is probably 40% accurate. It's not like the weather is always accurately predicted. You mentioned him being 73, and that's true. Joe Biden's 74, Bernie Sanders is 76. It looks like the future of politics, regardless of party, is about 75 Caucasian and male. Is that an issue?
Well, it should be. I mean, we are who we are, and it's odd that the leading contenders on the Democrat side are all in their 70s. It'll be interesting to watch, but look, that's part of how we all need to be judged. Joe Biden needs to be judged based on the whole package. Donald Trump should be judged based on his whole package. We all should, and let the American people decide.
Again, if you're joining us, Joe Walsh, Republican presidential candidate. Okay, Joe, a couple more quick questions, and we'll let you go. We appreciate your time. I want to talk to you, of course, about early voting primaries. We'll get to that in a second. But I have to ask you this question, right? I think it's a fair question. Why did it take you until 2018 to finally figure out that Trump is a scam artist? Why did it take you 2 years of his presidency to figure this out? Because that's a question that I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. You're obviously a very smart guy. Why did it take you this long?
It's a great question, and my only honest, noble answer was, I didn't take Trump as seriously as I should have. Look, in 2016, I voted for him, not because I loved him or liked him. He wasn't Hillary. And I figured at the time, Donald Trump is a goof. Look, he blocked me on Twitter during the campaign because I criticized him. I figured he was a goof. Maybe he'd appoint a couple good people, and maybe a few good things would happen. I learned pretty quickly after he became president that I can't believe a word he said. And then, as you said, he lost me for good at Helsinki. If it took me too long to get to the dance, that's on me, and I apologize for it.
Well, I appreciate that. Let's talk about the GOP ready to cancel these Nevada caucuses and other early voting primaries to help Donald Trump. This affects somebody like you, and it affects many others as well. You know, Sanford just came out that he's throwing his name in the hat to run as well. This is going to hurt people like you. What do you think about this?
And I don't know what I can say on the radio. I used to be on the radio, so I'll be very careful with what I'm going to say.
Okay.
This is absolute undemocratic BS. Think about what Trump and the Republican parties in South Carolina and Kansas did over the weekend. They basically eliminated elections. They basically disenfranchised Republican voters in those states. They took away their right to vote. Every day there's a scandal and an outrage with Trump. This one, though, is a new low. And every Republican in South Carolina and Kansas, they ought to be grabbing their pitchforks right now and marching on the offices of their state Republican Party because Donald Trump just took away their right to vote in 2020. We're going to fight this with everything we've got.
Speaking of Republicans, Joe, of course, we are getting back now out of the summer recess for folks in Washington, D.C. And, of course, we've had, obviously, much publicized, mass shootings in America here the last few weeks, and it's become a major issue. I wanted to get what you thought, if there's any anticipation whatsoever, that Mitch McConnell and other powers that be, Republicans in Washington, D.C. are actually going to take steps, and maybe, have bipartisan judgment when it comes to gun control in this country moving forward.
Well, I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I'm a big gun rights guy, but I'll acknowledge this. And I don't think there's a lot anymore that we can do about guns when it comes to stopping these mass shootings. I'll tell you that gun crimes and gun homicides generally are way down the last 20 or 30 years. But look, the idea of universal background checks, if I go to a gun dealer, I got to get a background check to buy a gun. If I'm going to buy a gun from my friend, same thing should happen. I should have to undergo a background check. So I think, we got to look at universal background checks, and we've got to look at red flag laws. and if they're carefully tailored and they don't violate constitutional due process, we should do everything we can do to make sure guns stay out of the hands of people whose own behavior has shown that they shouldn't have a gun. Don't expect Mitch McConnell to do much, though, guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. Another quick policy question for you. I know you're a pro-lifer. I know you're anti-abortion. With that being said, do you agree with what they're doing in Alabama, where if a young girl is raped, God forbid, she should be forced to have that child? Do you agree with a law that says that if a woman leaves that state and has an abortion in another state, she could receive up to 20 years in jail? Do you agree with that?
No.
You don't?
No, I'm pro-life without exception, but no. God, no.
All right. Well, that's fair enough. Well, Mr. Walsh, we always appreciate it when you take time to join us. Thank you so much, and we hope we can talk to you again maybe at some point next month. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for your time.
Joe.
Hey, I've enjoyed it, guys, and I'm coming to Nevada. I'll let you know when.
Love to have you in studio. Thanks, Joe. We appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
All right. There you go. Republican presidential candidate Joe Walsh. He certainly has said many controversial things in the past.
Oh, you said racist things in the past.
Racist things in the past. This is the one part that I really disagree with him on. I didn't want to get into the weeds with him on this.
Right.
I've probably had over 4,000 tweets. We've all had tons of tweets that we've put out there in our lifetime since Twitter began. I've never said one thing that could ever be construed as racist. Now, if some people have, I haven't. I've said tweets that I regret. I've gone after people with emotion, perhaps that I regret. We all have had tweets that we say, well, I'd probably take that back if I could. Never in a million years would I even come close to saying something racist, because I am not a racist person. Joe Walsh, his excuse, and this is where I disagree with him on. You can't just say, well, I've got 5,000 or 6,000 tweets, so you know what? I probably went overboard on a few of them and said some racist things. To me, that's not a valid excuse, and I think he looks really bad, with that.
Well, I don't necessarily know if that he's kind of motioning that as an excuse. I think that he needs to, I think that there's a lot of people out there, Brian, let's be completely honest, that don't accept his apologies, that don't think that they ring hollow, basically, right? So, those people, their minds are not going to be changed. Now, Joe's thoughts regarding the president, look, there's a lot of people out there that agree with those thoughts. That doesn't mean that we're on board with Joe Walsh as a person. Doesn't mean that I agree with everything Joe Walsh has said or done. That is absolutely not true.
Right.
But when it comes to certain things and certain opinions that he has regarding President Trump and people in the Trump administration, we're going to be on board with that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Look, I appreciate the fact that he has apologized for some of the things he said in the past. That's more than you could say for Donald Trump. He never apologizes for anything. I also appreciate the fact when Walsh says he went a little bit overboard with Obama. He let emotion get into it, and he's one of those people that at least could agree that Obama's a decent human being. It's those Republicans out there that attack Obama personally, say he's a horrible person, but then are silent when it comes to Trump. So I do respect Joe Walsh a lot more than I respect a lot of others on the right. I certainly will say that, and trust me, we will hear again from Joe Walsh. As he said, he's coming to Nevada, so we'll probably have him in studio. But I do question, why did it take him this long? And it took him till 2018 to criticize Donald Trump.
But it makes me think of this movie quote, Brian, and let me put this on you. Have you seen the movie JFK?
Absolutely.
And of course, Kevin Costner,
great movie.
Represents a prominent district attorney down in New Orleans, and he says in that movie, well, how come because a woman's a prostitute, she has to have bad eyesight? That's what I think about when I think about people like Joe Walsh and others, who have opinions. It doesn't mean they're wrong, or doesn't mean their opinions don't mean anything because they have transgressions in their past, right? Or because they happen to be a porn star, or they happen to be a prostitute, or whatever. It doesn't devalue their opinion. So, and that's kind of the same thing I think about when I think about Joe here.
Yeah, no question. All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just a few. We'll continue this conversation on the other side. I'm sorry. A lot of people want to say that this Sharpiegate situation, the media blew it out of proportion. No, we didn't. Nobody's blowing.
You're making it too big of a deal, Brian.
Yeah.
You're talking about it too much.
Well, I'll tell you. I'm going to explain to you why the media, including our show, including me, did not blow it out of proportion. I'm going to explain to you why the president lying when a hurricane is headed in harm's way to Americans, why that is not blowing it out of proportion. We'll talk about that. We'll take more of your phone calls. The GCI guys hotline open now, 702-257-5396. Again, if you want to be a part of the program, give us a buzz. That number, 257-5396. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. Your reaction to Joe Walsh and more when we come back. You're listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDAWN.